Hello, this is Anisha Rai, the editor of Identity, and we are here live at the Kohler booth at Downtown Design. Today we are hosting a roundtable discussion on sustainable futures in design, where we have leading designers from the industry joining us. Welcome to this roundtable. Please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your latest sustainable project.
Hi, I'm Inge Moore from Muza Lab. Our studio is in London. We really believe in sustainability. We've just opened the Royal Mansour Tamuda Bay in northern Morocco, and we always really think about how we can be sustainable.
I'm Rakan, Jandali, Design Principal Creative Director at KCA International. I've been with KCA my entire career, almost 18 years now. In terms of latest project or sustainable project, we've actually worked on a fully sustainable hotel that was supposed to be built here in the UAE. But then during COVID, that project was put on hold, and then they have moved the whole project to somewhere in Yeti Island in Oman, in Muscat, and which is currently being built. So it was quite an interesting journey to work on a sustainable project here in the region.
All right, Rakan, can we start with you? Can you tell us a little bit about, now this project of yours that you worked on that's been moved to a whole other country, has it changed anything in your approach?
When it moved, they just moved it as is. They didn't even change anything. They just took the whole project and developed it as part of a master plan over there. So the only challenge that we faced was to find locally sourced materials. You know, when you're doing a sustainable project, when you source materials, you have to make sure the carbon footprint is not impacting the environment. So you have to find something within the region itself. So that was one of the main challenges. And what we did is we looked at the Masdar City concept, and when they developed it in Abu Dhabi, we actually reached out to them. They were more than happy to come to our office, and we collaborated on looking at what kind of materials they have managed to source from suppliers, even paint, floorings, etc. And they have shared with us that library. That was quite generous of them. And then from there, we've established what we call a sustainable library and moved it forward.
Oh, that's very cool. Have you worked with any sustainable materials lately that you thought were fascinating?
We work with loads of sustainable materials. Like we use shell in our projects, and you think, oh, it's like shell that's taken from somewhere, but it's actually the waste product of the shell that's used from the old pearl industry, everything that's left over. The straw that we use lots of like raffia straw, but it's all kind of the old products or the leftover product from the farming industry in India. So it's great to use the products that nobody else wants and create something beautiful with it. And also something that's natural and kind of decomposes or can be reused.
So when you're approaching a project in terms of sustainability, what do you look at first? Do you look at sourcing locally, or do you look at, you tend to look at things that are will sometimes sustain for a longer time, but may not necessarily come from the region that the hotel or whatever concept that you're working on is placed?
I think every project is totally unique and different. So when we start a new project, the first thing is like, what is the right narrative for the project? And once we've got a beautiful story to tell with the project, then we start looking at products, and then you kind of think, okay, how can you improve the products or even reuse old products when they're renovations, kind of repurpose rather than remake.
Right. Rakan, what's your experience been like for sourcing sustainable materials? Do you look at it from a localized approach? Do you look at it from the manufacturer?
Yeah, as I mentioned, it was quite challenging to find proper materials that you can use, especially for, say, it was a 4-star hotel that we were working on. Because it's under NDA, I'm not able to mention the actual name, but because it is a 4-star, there are certain expectations in terms of the quality of the materials that we looked at. We actually did a full headboard in the guest room that was supposed to be reclaimed, out of reclaimed wood. And there was also something very special that we tried to do. When they created the canal through a Safa Park, there were a lot of trees that were removed. So we were able to acquire the trees, and we used the wood from these trees to be part of the joinery pieces and furniture pieces that we're designing. So it was evolving around utilizing these locally sourced materials. Also, the other thing is when you look at sanitary ware, how to specify your sanitary ware to make sure that it complies with sustainable approach from the flow rate system, making sure The water consumption is quite low, it's not as high. Also from an energy perspective. We even looked at implementing certain type of technologies that could help in a sustainable approach. For instance, in the lobby area, we on purposely put power generating pads in the floor, that when it's a heavy traffic zone, so when people are walking in and out, we have a chandelier in the ceiling. So when people are actually walking, they will see the chandelier interacting with them. So psychologically, they feel like they are contributing to energy within
Making
the
the
hotel.
light shine.
Yeah,
Hey? It's
so,
kind of fun.
yeah, that is like part of how you can play with the experience, you know, and create some sort of psychological approach for sustainable living in our hotel.
I think the other great thing about sustainable is that the whole world has embraced it. So suppliers, you know, stone suppliers are reusing old marble that comes off buildings, chopping it up and making like composite materials. Sanitary people are reusing old sanitary, you know, old baths are being recast into new baths. Fabrics, you get the most amazing, you know, really sustainable fabrics now that are woven with no chemicals. And you know, in our library, we've got a whole, you know, range of just kind of sustainable and very kind of natural fabrics. So every year, and I think you also see it at this show, there's more and more and more products that are all sustainable. And for me, I don't really like the word sustainable. I heard the word, it's a responsibility for us all. I think, and you know, we need to take on that responsibility to design in a way that there is something for the future.
Yeah, and it's a given now. We shouldn't actually. It's a dated topic, I would say. We should stop saying, "Oh, are you doing a sustainable approach in a project or not?" It should be in every project moving forward. We should actually move to the next phase of sustainability.
Exactly. So it's a responsibility to
yeah.
just kind of use products that are good for the world.
Right. And what does regenerative design look like? What do you envision it to be?
So, so there is a. I love this topic. I love regenerative design as a topic. I actually learned about it when I was doing my MBA 3 years ago. So the beauty of regenerative design is the focus. For instance, when we go to sustainability, the focus will be on the project. When you move to regenerative design, is the role of the project within its context, the community or the surroundings of it, and how it contributes to it. And it's about having this strong collaboration with nature. So humans and nature can coexist together. And a great example I would like to bring for collaboration with nature. We know that we, as designers, we love textiles and fabrics, and you know, to dye these fabrics to get the colors and the patterns, it goes through a very harmful chemical process to produce them, which is harmful to the environment in reality. And then when it's dated, it ends up in landfills somewhere, God knows where, and then it harms our environment. So there is this lovely designer, her name is Audrey Chiesa. She discovered a bacteria called Color. So this bacteria produces pigments of color. And what she did is she experimented to see if she can produce color and pigments for fabrics and textile, and she was successful with that. And then with technology, she was able to mass produce that and grow it to become successful to produce a lot of textiles.
It's almost like going back to the past when, you know, pigments and stuff were kind of natural. And
yeah,
that's how we
and this
color.
is how you collaborate with nature. That's the beauty.
And then
of
we
it.
went through this horrible state where everything was like chemical and bad, and now we're kind of going back. So it's always nice to see the world moving in waves.
Correct.
I'd love to know from the client side of things, is now sustainability a mandate because the consumers demand it, or they also have a self-interest in pursuing something that's built to last?
I think our clients all are really, you know, they care about the environment. And so it's number one, it's for themselves. Number two, it's a great story, you know, for the projects. And, you know, the client really cares. The end users want to be sure it's, you know, especially the younger generations are even more focused on it.
What about your experience with that?
I mean, especially when we work on these large developments that are coming up in Saudi, so you will see that sustainability is a must nowadays, and there are certain principles that you need to follow when you're developing your design or when you're specifying your products or materials, and that pleases me to see. And now even I was told about Red Sea, they're actually following regenerative design principles in their developments as well. So, and this is a young we can say, a young, evolving, developing region, and that's the beauty of it. These kind of principles now can be easily applied and evolved.
Yeah, well, they're
in our
part of
region.
every RFP
Exactly.
now.
Yeah,
You know, so
exactly.
it's kind of a given.
Yeah. So do they also look at certifications, for example, like LEED or?
I think they do look at certifications, but I think we must stay away from certifications that just kind of put things in a box. I think one needs to think much wider than
Yeah, don't just tick a box.
certification. Yeah. I think lots of certification is just like, it's too narrow.
And like when it comes to the storytelling element of any project that you do, where do you figure in sustainability as part of the narrative that you have about it, or?
I think
If you
for
could give me an
me,
example of-
sustainability isn't the narrative, the kind of the culture, the history, like where the location. For me, that's the narrative. And sustainability is just part of a process that we have to follow.
Right. Rakan, can you tell us a little bit about your experience working with the Cherry Hotel? Because I was looking at the project online, and it talked about integrating a lot of regenerative design principles. So could you just?
So when it comes to regenerative design or regenerative design approach, it's about listening to the land, its history, and the people that helped shape it. Yeah. And Cherry Hotel is located in Wadi Safar. Wadi Safar is very close to Diriyah, and Diriyah is very well known of its cultural identity, heritage identity with Najdi architecture, aesthetics. So what I wanted to do is how we can bring the Wadi elements into the interiors of the hotel while maintaining the cultural identity intact within our design process. So we had to collaborate closely with the architects, where Bjarke Ingels and their landscape architecture team. Also bring those elements of nature through design. For instance, we've designed in a guest room, the nightstand, it looks like it's carved out of stone that is taken from the Wadi itself. Even when the lobby spaces, how we brought the water element from the Wadi into a water feature element that is very still, that mimics the Wadi concept. So these kind of elements help a lot. One of the parts of regenerative principles, also creating design processes that gives back. So what I mean by that is, how do you collaborate with local artisans and artists to create certain furniture pieces and artworks to help revive some techniques, let's say, that are almost disappearing. You know, these cultural techniques, woven art, and even handcrafted furniture. And that created a whole ecosystem that is economic and cultural at the same time, that helped with sustaining livelihoods as well as preserving the identity.
I also think it's really nice when local people have made something, it's in their hotel, they can bring their people there to show them, oh look, we made this, it's in this really posh hotel. It binds the community together, and it kind of creates a sense of community. And that's why I don't just like, the certification, but it's like community, it's like bigger things as well.
So how did you collaborate with artisans and craftsmen?
I mean, I did the renovation of the one and only in Cape Town. And there we, wonderful craftspeople in Cape Town, in Southern Africa. In the private dining, we got the blind school locally to weave like this big chandelier, so that's like, it's an amazing piece. Number one, it's beautiful, and it's kind of great for them to say, our piece is at the one and only in the private dining room. And so like all the pieces of art were sold locally, craftspeople. We printed beautiful fabrics that a woman's group that was kind of underprivileged printed, and those were like the linings in the cupboards, And for me, that's so important, to kind of involve the community. And then also they get paid, it's part of the whole economic.
Is it often a problem at a cost level with the client when you try to have these, or are they usually on board with supporting the local communities? That
every client is different, but I think most clients understand, and they want to contribute to the community.
Yeah, it's the same for us, especially when you work on projects that are cultural and heritage. They actually encourage you to go find local artisans and craftsmen that could be participating into some pieces in a hotel, not just go for a branded furniture piece that is made in Italy. No, that we look at where you can bring it from
More
locally.
local.
Yeah, from local
I think
local
it tells a
manufacturers.
better story than like a product
Absolutely.
that's used
And it
everywhere in the
connects-
world.
It connects with people, with humans. You know, when the guests go and see this is a handcrafted piece, there is some sort of an emotional connection. They see there is a story behind it also. It's not just randomly being placed there.
Right. And in terms of more international brands such as Kohler, for example, how do you propose that would be a good way to collaborate with brands in like that are international but are also available locally?
Well, I think Kohler works on their kind of water flow. They're repurposing, you know, old metals, reusing things. So, you know, if every company does their own little bit within their field, you know, we can make a little step closer for the world to be a better place.
True, and I know that Kohler they invest a lot in innovation and technology in order to control the water consumption and, as you mentioned, also recycling these materials. So this contributes eventually to our project when we want to approach it with a sustainable or regenerative approach.
Have either of you been involved in such a dialogue with certain brands to
Talk to them
Yeah,
all the time
always.
about
Okay.
it, yes.
Yeah, we always communicate.
Yeah,
with
I'd love
them.
to hear
This is-
some more insights of how maybe a
I
certain
had a
product
full
was-
session with the Kohler team. I remember they came to the office with their sustainability director, all the way from the US. He came all the way to visit me in the office, and we discussed not only sustainability, I told him about regenerative design. He was interested how he can apply regenerative principles in their manufacturing and production process. So I hope, he told me he will come back to me and we continue this dialogue to see how they can evolve this in part of their production process.
And have you worked with any brands that have actually changed and thought about and come back with a product that you thought was like, okay, that was improved? I feel like, okay, there seems to be a hive mind when it comes to the interior designers giving that feedback into.
I think we've worked with lots of kind of fabric suppliers to print things like on a more local fabrics. We do it all the time on every little aspect, you know, furniture that's made, you know, closer to the source, artwork that's made at source. So there's many, many examples of it.
Okay. And I think both of you have been involved in developing spas at some point or the other when it comes to health and wellness and the concept of water being reused a lot in that space. How do you create a sense of calm and wellness in your perspective when it comes to giving that sort of an experience where a person can recline and relax? Because wellness seems to be on everyone's agenda, especially when they decide to take a holiday or go to a hotel.
When you talk about spas or wellness spaces, it's important to make sure that it's not over-designed. Yeah, like you don't have so many things going on. There is like a quiet balance between the details and the features that you're trying to produce within the design of these spaces. The other thing is we always talk about design and architecture and the materials we're using. Also, lighting is quite important in these spaces. So the way we design spaces, we collaborate closely with the lighting consultant to make sure it's very well lit in a way that the minute you enter, you have that sense of calm, sense of zen. You are prepared to your journey through wellness, etc., etc. So I feel this is like a very important key collaboration between lighting and design at the same time. So it's not just about the design architectural languages, but also about the ambience of the space in general. So you can also activate certain sensors, whether it's a smell, a scent, or the textures you're using to activate a sense of touch, etc. That brings certain emotions and calmness to the guests when they're inside the spa.
But there's many ways to present wellness as well, you know. So depending on the client, some spas are more kind of health and blood infusions, more kind of almost clinical.
Yeah.
So that's quite a different approach to a spa that's kind of, you know, in a forest, or that's kind of more zen. And I think it's very interesting that with all these different approaches, you still get health and wellness benefits. And you were asking about water, you know, so water is such a great, you know, it's the sound of water, it's how water falls, it's how, you know, the glistening of water when you see it. If you've got a property that's kind of close to the ocean, I think just being close to water is already a health benefit. And then we just have to apply it. We're the lucky ones that get to play with, you know, all these different projects, all these different briefs, and then we need to apply it in a way that works for the project.
So when you were doing the Royal Mansour, the spa over there, what were some of the local cultural practices that you've used into the spa to create that sort of experience that you would want to take?
Well, firstly, it's the most wonderful location. It's kind of close to the ocean, but in the garden, so it's kind of in the back part, in the garden part of the property. So we really wanted to pull the garden into the spa. So we immediately chose a color palette of green. And they're a wonderful client. They invested in, beautiful like green marble. So the pool is this green marble, which, the water on top of it immediately, the most amazing color. We created this quiet pool in the garden, which is kind of like a glass box. And then we did this big moon installation over it, like a big moon that's done with a pearl finish. That kind of, so taking the elements from nature, balancing them, but culturally, there's lots of privacy, so there's lots of screened elements, there's like corridors that you kind of not going to meet service people and clientele in the same corridor. So it's kind of right from space planning to the choice of every single material.
Right.
And then we wanted it to be very tactile, because Moroccan is very tactile. Zillige tiles, mosaics, the plants, the smells, the shadow lighting. So
both of you work across continents, and like you'll do very diverse projects. Could you explain a little bit how you are easily able to change course between this, and have you used some of the learnings from some of the project to another, especially when it comes to sustainability?
I mean, the beauty of us being designers, we're curious, right? And in order to activate your creativity, you have to be exposed to so many different cultures, locations, etc. So when you say we work here in the Middle East or we work in Asia or Europe, the beauty is the contextual aspect of that, or even the cultural aspect or the heritage aspect of these spaces adds to your experience and how you approach design as well. Even certain aesthetics. So when we look at, if we're designing in say in Saudi Arabia, a hotel project, there is a lot of use of special textures that are, Bedouin inspired. When you go to Asia, there are like completely different design and patterns that you look at, that you inject into your design as well. And the same thing when you go to Europe or to the Americas, for instance. And that's, I think, the beauty that adds to us as creators, as designers, and helps us expand our creativity. And nowadays, I would always love to just not work, and this is what I'm doing in KCA currently. We're not just working on hospitality-driven or luxury residential project. We're taking something that is quite unique. For instance, we're developing a grand mosque now in Saudi Arabia, because it's a completely different approach from hospitality to, but we add our experience as hospitality designers to these spaces and how the journey of the users within these spaces. Also, we were working on a stadium design, for instance. Stadium, we have a brand guidelines for a hotel. They have a guidelines from FIFA to design a stadium. It's a completely different approach, and that helps you diversify yourself sometimes. I love working on hospitality, but also sometimes you feel like you want to move out to do something slightly different and special. Yeah.
Well, what about you, Inge?
I think it's like being curious. We love learning about different cultures. Every project is different, the people are different, and that's the fun bit, is that, you learn from them, you have different experience, different food, different smells, different cultures, but you need to present something that hasn't been seen before every time, and that's the challenge.
Right.
And yes, we kind of, learn from old projects, what to do on sustainability, but always create something new.
All right. As a closing note, could you tell me what you're currently working on in terms of projects, or are they all confidential?
I mean, in terms of confidentiality, it's difficult to mention the actual name. But yeah, we have a very lovely hospitality project that we have managed to acquire. It's a lifestyle brand. I also love designing not only luxury, also lifestyle brand hospitality. Located somewhere very special. Hopefully, when it's about time, I'll be able to talk more about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're opening a project in the Maldives, like big, beautiful villas in December. The first phase of that will open. We're also doing a gorilla lodge in Uganda, like right up in the mountains. So they're both really, you know, but also, you know, some big residential projects here in Dubai.
All right. Thank you both so much for your time. It was a very interesting conversation. We had a lot of interesting insights, especially from different parts of the region, and it was great to learn about your new projects. That's all for us here at the Kohler booth. Thank you, Kohler, for providing us this space, and see you next time.